Hey everybody, it's Stephen Brooke and welcome to Architectural Photography and Composition. We're doing this mid-October, which means Halloween is coming up, and what better time to talk about architectural photography at night, which is really some of the most fun and interesting kind of photography that we do, whether it's exterior or interior or even landscape. So we're going to take a deep dive in, and at the end I want to tell you what I think is the single biggest mistake that photographers make when they're doing night photography. So let's have a look. There are two important aspects to night photography. There are a lot, but I think these are the two that are really the most important. One is that the shadows without detail are compositional. We've seen that when we've looked at the paintings of De Chirico, and we've seen that in other painters. And also that the areas that are illuminated lead your eye. They direct your viewer's attention through the painting. Now, the painters that we've looked at in the past to help us with our work, like Vermeer or De Hoek or Sanradam, they didn't paint at night. They didn't do night scenes. And so we have to look elsewhere to find some paradigms for great night photography. This is Elsheimer's Flight into Egypt. And this was actually done in 1609. And let me show you the two aspects we're talking about. This is Elsheimer's painting, and I've outlined just the deep shadow areas, and there's almost no detail in this at all. And you can see that this black area that I've darkened this to make my point, that it is in contrast nicely to the areas that are illuminated. It makes its own nice form. And if you look at the areas of illumination, they definitely lead your eye over to this part of the painting. You can see what looks like the Milky Way or whatever on an angle leading this way. The little group over here that's illuminated leads you to this group, leads you over here. So that's a good example. We've looked at Hopper and this painting in particular for several things. One is, if you look at, see how he handles his light and how he takes you to this little group of people over here. You come in this way, turn the corner, and you can see this area of shadow and area of light. The light leads you this way, the light leads you this way, and down to the group of people. Over here, this is Uri's painting. The areas of illumination lead you all the way to the back. And if you remember in our video on shapes to memorize for architectural photography, we talked about this one streetscape shape where you have a facade and you have a vertical darkened, and this is exactly that same kind of shape. It's suppressed compared to some of the others, but you can see how your eyes are led through this painting by the areas of illumination. Martin Lewis is a wonderful etcher and engraver, and we looked at him when we talked about 6 artists to study for architectural photography in black and white. And if you haven't seen that video, I suggest you take a look at it, because it has some really interesting people to study and their work and how that helps us in black and white. Martin Lewis in particular, if you look at how his deep shadowed areas frame his view, and that he takes you where he wants you to go with the areas that are illuminated. It's dark down here, you go dark to light, dark to light, dark to light. So there's a lot. The layers and the depth of these engravings are wonderful, and they're only in black and white. There's no color to move you around. He does everything with deep shadows and having the areas of illumination lead you into the painting. Here's Ippolito Coffi's views of Rome and Venice, and again, he does the same thing. The shadows, where there is no detail, the shadows are still compositional, here, 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 and the areas of illumination lead you to where Coffi wants you to go. Now, let's take a look at the specific reasons why you would want to do nighttime photography. The first one is to create an iconic and a timeless image. This was one of the first views that I took at Seaside, Florida, the town in the Panhandle that was ground zero for the new urbanism movement, for sane urban development. And I showed, obviously it's at the sea, I showed the kind of architecture that was being used. You can even tell by just the proportion of the architecture that it has classical orientation, that you're standing in this gazebo looking out to the water, there's nothing in your way, and that was something that was a part of the Seaside plan, was to not have really large scale buildings between you and the water. And this one photograph of Seaside, for a time, was the most published photograph I had in my portfolio. This was used everywhere. You saw Seaside, that was the iconic image, and it was a night shot. This is the Palmer Trinity School Chapel. I have lots of photographs of this, but I and they thought this was the signature shot of the building, and it's the night shot. Miami International Airport, again, I have hundreds of photos that I've taken at MIA, and this night shot is the one that everybody likes, and that's used as a signature shot. Now, to show what can't be seen during the day, particularly volumetric relationships, this Scott Hughes architect house, this is a nice shot from the back. It shows a lot, but what it doesn't show is how the volumes really work in the house. You really need to see into the building to appreciate that, and you need to wait at night to do that. This is one of Suzanne Martinson's houses. You look over here, again, it's a nice photo. It tells you something about the exterior. What you can't see is how she has this open plan in here, that the kitchen, the living room, the dining room are all one room together. And you can see that the house is really only one room thick, and she did that for climate reasons. And a night shot shows you that information. Here's Ronaldo Borges' house. What you can't see here is how these rooms relate, how this lattice work really works. At night you see the lattice. What you don't see is how the lattice provides a screen when you're inside that room. Here's a close-up of this, and you can see all the way through. And we're going to talk about color temperature, but this is a shot taken where my camera is tungsten balanced, or 3200 degrees. So any of the daylight that's left reads this nice inky magic blue, and the incandescent lights read normally. To show interior spaces like we've seen in lighting plans, lighting in the pool, deck lighting. Here's a Portuando Perotti house. Again, nice shot during the day, but look at all the layers and the care that's taken in the landscape lighting. And again, here's a screen that they use. You see the screen here, and it's flat to your eye. You don't get to see in. When you shoot this at night, you can see the rooms behind, and you get a sense of how the screen works when you're inside the house. To show lighting schemes, especially in an urban setting, if you have landscape architects as clients, obviously one of the things they do is to plan the lighting for urban areas, for streets, whatever. And night shots obviously are necessary to show that. To capture moments of rare light play on the building. This is a north elevation. And what I've done is I've really waited to very, very late in the day. Not quite a night shot, more like a twilight shot. And I've got the setting sun over here, and it is casting light on the building. Now, this is a daylight balanced shot, and that's why these incandescent lights read really warm. And if they read too warm to your eye, you can always correct them, and we looked at that and how to correct areas of mismatched color in the video on hue and saturation. To show lighting plans, interior structure, and drama, there's a piece of artwork here out at Miami International Airport, and obviously during the day you're not going to see how this artwork is installed here, but at night, of course, you can see it. And this is another house by Rolando Borges, and the night shot shows better than the daylight shot how all these roof planes work together. This is a World Savings Bank for Suzanne Martinson Architects. The interior drop ceiling containing the lights. Inside you can see that, but you really can't see all of it because it's spread across the whole interior. But at night outside you can see these drops, these ceiling units and the lighting in there and how it illuminates the whole bank. You can see this so much better during the day. Of course, the reflection on the window is so strong you're not going to be able to see that. To show circulation, not possible to see during the day. This is bright here. You're not going to see, there may be a few lights in here, but it's not going to be enough to really balance the full daylight. So you don't get a sense of this pathway in here where you come in, you can go this way, sit here, or go all the way through. You need a night shot to show that. Structural details, again, out of Miami International Airport, where you can see the space frame inside the building. This is an apartment building. This area, during the day, you can see part of this treatment on this one wall, but at night you can see what the designer really had in mind, that this was going to be illuminated. And also the stairway, you can see this much more, you can see all the details and how it works at night. This lattice work in front shows up much better at night than during the day. To show evening views from interior spaces, we looked at layering, where you can be in a room looking to the outside and it's daylight and you can layer them. But you can also really dramatically show areas outside. This is tungsten balance. This is part of the airport. This is the Delta Lounge. Or you can show night shot. Again, these are tungsten balance, so the tungsten lights, the incandescent lights and all, are going to read normal, and the light outside is going to have that kind of magic blue quality. To convey mood, look at the difference between a daylight shot of this little porch and the nighttime shot. Party time here. Now, this is just for drama, and this kind of shot you need to be careful with. This is tungsten balance, so that you can see the incandescent lights back here are properly, the color is right. And all of the ambient light, all that's left is daylight, which at tungsten balance is going to be inky blue. If you take this shot too soon, the blue is going to be bluish purple. It's going to be too light. It won't have this kind of quality. Here, the sculpture is lit incandescent light, and at night, all the way at night, this is all dark. There were no lights out here, so this would have just been pitch black. So I shot it with the last little bit of daylight, tungsten balance, and it gives me that nice blue quality. Now, normally when we do night shots, I insist that you stop shooting where you can no longer see any differentiation between the sky and the roof line. You always want to do that. But I've been and still am been obsessed with sci-fi book covers and sci-fi illustrations and space stations. And so what I wanted to do at Miami International Airport for this building and this shot in particular, I wanted to give it a quality of a space station on some other planet, on whatever. And so I took this all the way down to where the sky was black, like here. Again, I don't recommend this because you really want to see a little bit of sky remaining in your shot. But for this one in particular, I went all the way to a black sky. Note the completely different moods at each time of day. Here's a daylight shot, Carl Abbott Architect House. This is very, very late in the day, early evening, tungsten balance, so the sky reads normally, the interior lights read warm, and then this is a tungsten balance, deep blue sky, and the interior lights here read pure white. Now you can make a decision for yourself or with your client, maybe for shots like this, this may be the more attractive shot, the more residential shot, the more romantic shot for, for a house, as opposed to this, which might be a better color quality for something more industrial. We actually like this one. to save a bad weather day. I was 3,000 miles from my house. I couldn't go back the next day. And the sky never got better than this. And I did a lot of work with it to get it better. And it really it didn't get to be the great shot I wanted. So I waited until the evening. Now all this ambient daylight with tungsten balance turns blue. I get a nice sky, I get nice contrast, and then I can see all the lighting here. This saved the day for me. North elevation in the winter months, there's a video on shooting in the summer. In the winter, if you have an elevation that's dead north, you don't get any sun from September 21st on. You get no direct sun on the building. So here's a shot, and I like early morning, late afternoon. That's the time to do it because you don't want the sun in your eye back here. Early morning, late afternoon. I like this shot. I don't love it, but I like it. But I really do like this shot that I took at night of the same elevation. For me, this one works for the north elevation. Now, I found this in my years of working to be true, that the night photos are by far the most saleable commercially. Very often, the signature shot of the building will be a night shot, and that may be the only shot the client really wants. Or after they look at the whole array of photos that you've given them, the night shot's the one shot they put on their website, the one shot that they use to show their client. It's dramatic, and it behooves us as architectural photographers to really learn how to do night shots correctly. Because this is Miami International Airport, again, anytime they publish shots in their newsletters or whatever, they always use a night shot. And I have other really good shots, but they always use these night shots. Evening landscapes, same thing. Shadows without detail, the eye being led by the areas of illumination. Landscape architects, if they're good ones, will take great care in the lighting, and that's part of your job, to be able to photograph the gardens at just the right time so that you still see plenty of detail. It's not all black, but you can see all the lighting treatment. Now, I showed this one because this is a product of a lighting designer designed this lamp. So obviously I need to shoot this either at twilight or evening. I chose to shoot this at twilight because I wanted to see the garden. I wanted to see everything, not just my lamp. So I have been talking about how important it is to use proportional systems. Here I use my go-to 2x3 proportional system, and just to make sure I get everything emphasized right where I want it to be emphasized, here's my lamp right at a primary vertical subdivision. It's 2/5 of the way in. The primary horizontal subdivision separates this whole grass area from the rest of it. The other elements fall, for the most part, on some hot spot on my grid. And I adjusted my height, I adjusted my distance so that this would happen. But again, this is a twilight shot, so you can see that they're lit, but it's not a totally evening shot because this would all disappear. Here's the workflow. And let's review for a second. If you're doing evening shots, you set your white balance to 3200 degree Kelvin. If your white balance, you have degrees Kelvin, you can do that in very, very carefully. Or if you just have presets like tungsten, shade, fluorescent, you set it to tungsten 3200. The pure whites, as we've seen, will read as pure white, and the sky and any ambient light is going to read this kind of magic blue. Interiors, in the quartz lights or incandescent lights are going to read normally when you're at 3200. Now, if it's evening conditions and you set your white balance somewhere around the daylight area, this is what will happen. You'll see the sky will read blue, but kind of a more natural blue. The incandescent lights, unlike these, are going to be much, much warmer. Now, again, with hue and saturation and localized color correction, you can bring that closer to, say, a more natural tonality. Sometimes you might not want to because that extra warmth gives a little bit of extra romance. Now, inside, incandescent lights, quartz lights, tungsten balance, you can't do this at daylight balance because it turns everything orange. So this is an obvious workflow, but I want to go through all of this. Number one, be at your location ahead of time. This is a time-consuming operation. And in those last minutes, you don't want to be fussy. Well, I really need to be here. You want to get that set up ahead of time. And for the most part, my evening shot is part of a series that starts with late afternoon, sunset, twilight, and evening. So I'm set up way ahead of time. Your tripod must be on solid ground. And if you don't have a cable release, I strongly urge you to get a cable release, because I don't care how careful you are, when your finger hits that button on your camera, the tiniest little shake, especially for the kind of exposures you're going to have for night shots, and you can't fix that in RAW, or you can't fix that in Photoshop. If it's blurry for all eternity. So a cable release is really of value. Make sure all the interior and exterior lights are on way before the sun sets. And this may require your client to override sensor, whatever that is, that's what you need to do. Because at the 0 hour, you can't, where is that lighting? How do you turn that on? You can't be doing that, you'll go crazy. And you won't get the shot you want. You need all your lights on ahead of time. And the other reason is, the balance between the incandescent lights and the daylight, that might happen sooner than you think, depending on what the sky conditions are, depending on the level of illumination. You might have really low-level bulbs or high-level bulbs. That's all going to change. You need that stuff all on ahead of time. Now, make several exposures to be sure of your position. Not at night, during the day, so you can really check and make sure you are where you want to be. And if you can see like lamps or whatever, anticipate, is this going to be too close to the window? Is this going to blow out a wall? Try to think ahead of time if you know you're going to have some problems with interior lights, and get those fixed. Sometimes you have to have your assistant with the cell phone walkie-talkie back and forth to adjust the lights to get them exactly right. Now, as you see the light change, bracket your exposures, just like we've always done. I say bracket -2 to +2 from the middle point, 13 exposures, and then make a blank in between, so you set aside each little group of exposures as the light changes. Now, as you get on into the evening, the light's going to change really fast. And in the winter months, the sun rises midday, sets in a hurry, and you have to really be prepared. Again, if you can get the app that I recommended called Sun Surveyor Lite, it's free. There's an ephemeris in there, and it will give you all of the time for blue hour, golden hour, sunrise, midday, on through the evening, and it will tell you exactly when you should be thinking about a twilight shot, an evening shot. This is really helpful. I live with that app, Sun Surveyor Lite. And then, as the evening lights become dominant, you change your color temp. Now, for the exposures, they're long. And you normally would take every third of an exposure. As the light changes quickly, you may not be able to do that. You may have to skip an exposure, so you're shooting every other shot on your bracket. Now, I say this that if you're at f11 or f16, which you should be, at 30 seconds, and everything is still too dark, and you know you still have daylight, you may consider opening your shutter, maybe go to f11, maybe go to f8, but know that when you do that, you're going to change your depth of field, and depending on your lens, you may get some softness at the corners, at the edges, that you didn't get when you were shooting at f16. Now, you can change the ISO, but I wouldn't do that because you're going to pick up grain. Because night shots are longer, and you will pick up digital noise. So this is what a typical sequence looks like. Forget these two. This is, you can see, this is my sunset shots coming. Now, once the sun sets, if you look in through here, when the sun is setting and there's still daylight, you are basically in an overcast situation where you don't have direct red, you don't have direct yellow, and so you've got bluer, greener, cooler shadows. At that point, if you've been shooting, let's say at 5500, you may have to up your color temperature up into the 7000s to warm it up. Then, as the temperature change, as the light intensities change, ambient light gets lower, the interior lights start to show up more, then you can switch back down to 3200 to take advantage of the dominant light being the tungsten lights. So here we go. Here's a daytime shot. No, this is when I'm setting my shot up, when it's during the day and I can see everything, not at night. Late afternoon, note the sun is lower. I'm getting light underneath the overhang. Photographs taken right at sunset, obviously they're going to be much warmer. The sun is lower in the sky, going through more moisture. It's going to be more yellow, more red. And if you find that is too warm, you can always change that in camera raw. Now, once the sun sets, here's that situation where it really looks like overcast situation. You've got some incandescent light showing, but the overall light's kind of flat. Often you can't get much out of here. You have to wait until the ambient light is down sufficiently and the incandescent lights come up enough. Now you've got something you can work with. I'm going to continue to make my brackets as things get darker. Once I get to this point, where clearly the incandescent lights are the dominant light source, even though there's some ambient light, that's when I will switch over to tungsten. Now, if you're shooting something like this with signage, the last couple of photographs you make may have to be layered. For example, here at this hospital, this shot's fine for the emergency sign, but it's way too dark. This one is great for the rest of it, but the sign is blown out. So, and this is an emergency sign, you really need to see it correctly. So you layer these two exposures to make one that's right. So when you're setting this shot up, you know ahead of time, this neon is going to blow right out on me. I have to make sure when I do my bracket, I look in the back of my camera and I say, okay, this is really dark, but the signage looks great. And then I go on and make the rest of my exposures knowing I don't care what happens to the signage. I'm going to get that later. Here's a problem if the sun sets behind the building. You're standing there shooting at east elevation at night and the sun is setting directly behind the building. The problem here is when the lights are right here, the sky is still too bright. Now you can try to do this and layer it. Sometimes it's possible, and depending on the sky, usually it isn't. So the way you deal with this is in reverse. You are here pre-dawn. You need your client's, your owner's permission. You need to stake it out ahead of time the day before to know exactly where you're going to be. You get there at dawn. So the first couple of shots you're going to get are the equivalent of your night shots. Then as the light gets brighter and brighter, you're going to move yourself through daylight, night shot, dawn, sunrise, low sun angle, very yellow, and onto the actual daylight shot. So you're going to do this whole thing in reverse. Is it worth it? Yes, it's really worth it, because this way you'll get exactly the kind of sky you would get if you're shooting a west elevation, let's say, and the sun is setting behind you. The single biggest mistake that photographers make when they're photographing night shots, they quit too soon. This is a 20-second exposure, f11, ISO 100. Now, when I shot this, to the naked eye, the sky already looks black. But when you've had some experience doing this, you'll know that if tripod is steady, using a cable release, nobody's moving around, nobody's bumping your camera, 20-second exposure will get you the shot that you want. You will get the sky. Now, when do you quit? Except for that one photo that I showed you. You quit when you can no longer see sky and roof line separate one from another. Then you can quit, then you can go home. So if your entire bracket doesn't give you any color in the sky, then you know you can pack it in, but not beforehand. And keep in mind, even though you look at the sky and you say, that's it, I'm done, you're not done. So again, let's think of the two key elements. One, shadows without detail must be compositional, and that the areas of illumination lead your eye. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel and want to know when more videos are coming, hit the subscribe button. It's free. But if you would like to contribute to the site, please consider purchasing a copy of Architectural Photography and Composition, my ebook that's available at StephenBrookePhotography.com. It's a great companion to the videos. Pages are printable, like the workflows. And if these videos have helped you with your work, consider purchasing a copy. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.